Do you come from a traumatic past, maybe have unhealthy attachments and are trying to build healthy, loving relationships? Then this video is for you. Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Fola, and here on Deep Mind Squared, we talk all things magical practices and altered states. And really, it's about us supporting our healing through a variety of different ways, especially as we open up to more love. Because I think that's ultimately why we're here on this planet, is to create and experience that expansiveness of love and pleasure and joy. So sometimes that can be a really hard thing, especially for those of us who maybe have come from traumatic pasts. And I think most people have. We talk about adverse childhood experiences, and they see that majority of people have experienced in some form or another traumatic events, whether it was to themselves or they witnessed it amongst family members, caregivers, or other people in their life. So have an open mind with this video. Even if you don't think you've experienced anything traumatic, oftentimes, I know for myself, we kind of can put those things aside and look at our own experiences in life as it's not as bad as so-and-so or whatever the case might be. But ultimately, we all have gone through something, and it's okay to go through the journey the way you need to, obviously, but just have that compassion for yourself. My personal experiences with trauma I've shared in some other videos, but I did have a repressed memory come up around some sexual childhood abuse, and I won't talk about those details here. Just know that if that's something you're going through, I understand it is not always the easiest thing, but there is a possibility to heal and hold space for yourself so that you don't have to live in any fear or distrust any longer. It takes time. So I wanted to share in this video just some ways that I found it really helpful for me on my journey to learn to heal and to process some of these wounds, and the way I've shown up in relationships, which weren't always the most healthy. And I think we're always learning, so I continue to learn. I'm definitely not an expert on this topic, but I do find with the people who come to see me that I guess I have made some progression in my life. So I'm very grateful for that. Thinking back to how I was when I first started and how some of the relationship choices I made weren't really the most positive the most beneficial for me. So before we get into all that, I invite you to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you're updated on future video releases. And let us know in the comments, is attachment or relationship building something that you struggle with? Because know that you are not alone. I think many of us struggle with creating healthy, positive relationships, and it is a daily task, a daily reminder for us that we have to continue to choose and not go back into old patterns that aren't so healthy. One of my interests is around the concept of the twin flame relationships, and what does this mean? I have people reach out to me about hey, I feel like I've met my twin flame and all these sorts of things, and don't doubt that we have really deep connections with people, but I do think it's a really fine line of how do we connect with someone, see the mirror, which is what a twin flame is. It's this other aspect of ourselves that they're teaching us so that we can learn to heal those deep wounds. And that's why those people tend to be the greatest teachers, really trigger the biggest wounds within us. Those all have to do with the abandonment wound, in my opinion, a lot with rejection. And that's something that many of us feel go through as well when we're young. Whether our caregivers did that intentionally or unintentionally doesn't really matter. It still can be very painful, very hurtful for the child who's not so aware of what's going on in the world and how the world kind of operates. But the biggest thing for me in terms of switching out of those old unhealthy, dare we call them false twins? I don't really know if that's a thing or not. Probably. It's for me, it's been this concept of saying no, setting boundaries, and knowing my worth, knowing what it is that I'm going to allow into my life. And this oftentimes means that we are going to have to face up to the fact that we don't want to be alone. We don't want to not be in a relationship, because again, that feeds the whole abandonment rejection wound, right? And it can be a challenge because here you are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. You either pick the person who you think, I just don't want to be with no one, so I'm going to pick this like unhealthy, very toxic relationship, and people put themselves in some pretty dangerous situations. Or I'm going to have to choose this feeling of, okay, it's just me in my own space. But let me just tell you, the more you can continue to let go of those old, unhealthy relationships that really have nothing to give you or offer you, the more being in that place of just you is going to feel more like home. So getting comfortable with being alone, getting your own space. Sometimes that might mean moving out, allowing yourself to be in that uncomfortableness, face into the fear, because trust me, that's going to happen, and know that you can build that connection or relationship with the most important person in the world, and that is you. And part of my journey has really been about uncovering, like, what are those wounds? How do I support the healing within? And that's ultimately what this channel is about, right? It's about magical practices, different altered states, or inducing altered states through a variety of means so that we can access these deeper parts of our consciousness, heal those wounds, heal the parts of ourselves, and really dive into like this connection with our higher selves, with divine spirit. And so starting a spiritual practice, for me, it's been a lot around the Hermetic Kabbalah and other forms of magic and ritual, as well as the shamanic healing. Diving into ritual has been like so beneficial, and meditation as well, because those things help to get really into the subconscious and to allow like a conversation to take place between the things that I think I know and the things that I actually truly know within. And that allows me to feel more empowered. So I'm hoping that that's something, if you don't already have a magical practice, start something, even if that's just simple prayer, because there's so many ways in which you can do this that's going to feel right for you. You don't have to like go and buy magical robes and set up this fancy altar, or like, I don't know, other flagellate yourself. I'm not sure what other things people might do, but you just make it your practice. That's the important part. And know that there's no right or wrong about how that looks. You can like trust your intuition to guide you to what's going to feel right. Another huge piece for me has been the whole plant medicines, like psychedelics world. That is like a huge piece on sometimes uncovering parts of the self and really diving into like the shadow work. What are those darker parts of the self that I don't really want to see? My choices and like allowing unhealthy relationships into my life and being able to face them. And, there's various ways you can go about with plant medicines. I have some videos on microdosing, so feel free to like check those out. And I think people use a wide range of plants. It doesn't necessarily have to be psychedelics. There's a lot of healing properties, even through meditation, with all different plants. One in particular that I really enjoy is the bleeding heart, which is great for like codependency, healing these sort of like toxic relationship patterns. And so you can buy like flower essence, which you can actually ingest, that is from the bleeding heart plant. Or you could easily just look at a picture of it, meditate, call that energy in, and ask it to support you with creating these positive relationship changes in your life. And then of course, we can't do these things by ourselves. How do we expect to create healthy, positive relationships if we don't have healthy, positive relationships? And I understand it's not always easy, especially, if you have these past traumatic events that have happened where you don't trust certain people, especially for women. If you've had really severe experiences with not being able to trust men, that's going to take time to build up. How do I start to open up again to men, whether it's a romantic relationship or not? And what I found really helpful is a few different things. Obviously speaking with someone that I trust, and that's been like a therapist, someone who can hold like unbiased space for me and really support me with obviously healing traumatic wounds. So EMDR being one of the major like trauma therapies has been really helpful. And also being able just to like share what's coming up for me. That's been super beneficial in that like therapeutic client relationship. So find someone that you feel like you can trust, whether it's a therapist, a coach, someone that understands a bit about some of these processes and can come from like a trauma-informed approach. And that's something that I do with folks. So obviously you could reach out if that's something you're looking for. Another thing that I found helpful to start to like recreate how I was perceiving men was to start allowing men into my life that did obtain this sort of perspective of, hey, like that guy looks like a healthy, positive male role model. And this approach to building a relationship with someone that is non-sexual, not intimate at all, because I think that's an important part, especially if you've had like sexual abuse stuff from your past, but allowing yourself just to be able to engage in a healthy way, not being codependent or relying on them to try to fix or solve, or you to fix or solve them, but to just be able to hear and be in like that energy. That was something that I really felt quite grateful for as I started to open up again to like the masculine in my journey. And I would tell these men in my life, like, I just want you to know that I'm so grateful. Like, thank you for being a healthy male role model for me, because honestly, in my life, I haven't really found that many. And those were kind of the pieces that supported me. Of course, you want to make sure you're surrounding yourself with friends and people who can at least listen to you and try their best to understand what's going on for you. But know that sometimes your friendships or your closest like family relationships, those might start to shift as you start to create these healthier like relationship patterns. And that's just because we pull in the people in our life who resonate or like vibrate at our same level, right? At our energetic frequency. So as soon as we start to create these changes and make different choices on how we want to show up in relationships, then people are going to start to really come in. And you can see this happen in all areas of your life, right? Whether it's your like work, with working with clients or people that you're hoping to like engage with, people in your family, in your friendships, even with your children. And so there's a lot of healing potential that happens once we start to make these choices. So I encourage you, give these things a try. Feel free to let us know in the comments, what are some ways that you've supported creating these healthy changes, letting go of some of those unhealthy attachment styles, and really starting to heal those traumatic wounds. And I look forward to seeing you all in another video. Take care.